Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Joey Dwyer, here to break down Vanderbilt's new non-conference schedule for the 2023-2024 season. Certainly a lot different than it's been in the past, and we'll have some thoughts on that. But before I get started, I wanted to mention that our basketball content is presented by the Wash House. If you're strapped for time and it's taking away time from things you want to enjoy the most, contact the Wash House and their laundry professionals, and they can help you with that. Contact them and Steve Andrews at www.washhouseclean.com. But I wanted to give them a quick mention, although it's not a true, real podcast. I wanted to mention them because they have been a big help to us. But Vanderbilt has really changed its philosophy in terms of non-conference scheduling. Stack mentioned that he would. After the UAB game, I think he realized the error in his ways last season, scheduling VCU on the road, Temple on the road, going to MTEs where you're playing in an empty gym against Fresno State and St. Mary's. A lot of games I think Vanderbilt wishes it had back, especially games against good mid-majors that could really hurt its resume, but also have a chance to beat Vanderbilt. I think we saw that with Southern Miss last year, saw it with Grambling State, saw it with Wofford, although Vanderbilt did beat them. That would have been another huge loss for Vanderbilt, and it was right there. So Vanderbilt pulled that one out, but generally I think Stackhouse saw that this is not what he wanted out of his non-conference schedule, and it really came back to bite Vanderbilt. Probably was the difference between it making the tournament and not. There's a lot of games there that Vanderbilt obviously could have had back, and I think Vanderbilt really in the past had misevaluated what the algorithms would be like in terms of the net, in terms of KenPom, had really misevaluated what it needed to do to raise those rankings. It had relied too much on strength of schedule and playing on the road rather than victory margin and just picking up quad 2 and quad 1 games in general. I think Vanderbilt's found a better mix this year in terms of teams that it can run out of the gym and beat by 30, 20 points, but also finding teams on the schedule like Texas Tech, like Memphis, that it can go and play a quad 1 or quad 2 game against. I think Boston College is a game that kind of scares me. San Francisco also scares me as a game that could end up as a quad 2 or a quad 3. You really don't want quad 3s if you're Vanderbilt. I think that really doesn't do you any good playing against a team like Boston College that probably won't be a quad 2 team when playing at Memorial Gym. Same with San Francisco, but those are two teams that could probably beat you. Let me read off the whole schedule real quick. Vanderbilt opens with Presbyterian, plays USC Upstate, UNC Greensboro, Central Arkansas for the first 4. Gets his first real test on November 23rd against NC State. That'll probably be in the range of a quad 2 game, maybe a quad 3 game. I think NC State's going to be a little bit better than it was last year, even though it lost to Quavion Smith, though. BYU/Arizona State, the winner of that or the loser of that, depending on what happens the night before, Vanderbilt will play. That's in Vegas, I believe. Then Vanderbilt goes home against Boston College, so its first real tough stretch there of 3 games, but probably not part of what it'll see in the SEC. Those are games I think Vanderbilt has to get at least 2 of, otherwise it'll be difficult. But looking at that start, you presumably will start 4-0 with those 4 mid-majors. If you look at the KenPom and the net of the teams that Vanderbilt's playing in terms of mid-majors, significantly lower than it was against the team. Those rankings are significantly lower than what Vanderbilt faced last year with Southern Miss, Grambling State, teams like that, Wofford. So I think Vanderbilt has really made an adjustment to teams that it thinks it can beat by a significant margin, and I think it can with all those first 4 teams. Obviously, still trying to get acclimated with those rosters. It's August, and those are mid-majors who were all generally below 300 in the net and KenPom, but I think one or two of those teams maybe give them a fight. But obviously, if all of those teams are in the 300 or above range in KenPom in the net, you generally know what you have there. Then you get the test with the 3. Alabama A&M comes to Memorial Gym. That's a game that hurt Vanderbilt a lot last year, and I'm not sure I love them scheduling them again. Alabama A&M always has athletes. Probably not a team that's super easy to blow out, and Vanderbilt couldn't do that last year. Vanderbilt was also a much different team in December last year than it was later in the year. And I think Jerry Stackhouse has kind of realized that that might be the case again, and he wants to give his team a little margin for error, which I think is a good sign because it means he's adapting and also realizing that it's a little bit flip of a coin in terms of what you can do against a team like Temple or VCU when you don't quite have your identity yet, and you don't really know what you are as a group. Vanderbilt will have time to figure that out against teams who aren't as great early on in the year. They won't have to be tested on opening night like last year against Memphis, and Memphis will be its only road game in non-conference play this year. So I think Vanderbilt has really kind of toyed with a lot of what its potential results could be and has made it easier on its group this year. But what I like is that it hasn't quite sacrificed testing early, and it hasn't quite sacrificed resume building opportunities early. You have NC State on the schedule still. You have Arizona State or BYU, probably both teams that will end up in Quad 2, I would imagine. Memphis could be a legitimate Quad 1 team. Boston College is a team that's going to test you. Texas Tech, probably a Quad 1 or Quad 2 game. I'd lean Quad 2, but that's going to be a tough environment in Texas. Even though it's a little far from Texas Tech, still would guess that's a heavy Texas Tech crowd. So Vanderbilt's going to be tested early, but also it's probably going to leave non-conference play with 7 or 8 guaranteed wins. And then if you can at least split the Power 5 games against Texas Tech, Arizona State / BYU, NC State, Boston College, Memphis, there's 5. And then San Francisco, I think, is also a game to watch. There's 6 teams that could potentially help your resume there. 2 that could hurt it with Boston College and San Francisco. But if you can get 3 of those games and then you can get the rest of the games, you're probably sitting at double-digit wins heading into SEC play and are in a much better spot than you were previously. So I think Vanderbilt made errors in the way it scheduled last season, but it's kind of figured out what it needs to have on its resume heading into SEC play to have a higher net, have a higher KenPom, and really just have more of a captivated audience as it goes into SEC play. Last year, South Carolina, the SEC opener, kind of felt like a game that was just a formality. Didn't really feel there was much buzz around that game because of what Vanderbilt did and honestly didn't do in non-conference play. Vanderbilt didn't have anything on its resume coming out of non-conference play, and I think it could avoid that this year just because I think this group could have more continuity early in the year because of its guards and how those guards can really open up the offense for others. I think having 2 experienced old guards is really going to be beneficial for this team, especially since this team is going to have time to gel early on in those first 4 games. I think Jerry Stackhouse gives this team a little bit of a grace period before it goes and plays NC State. So a lot to like with the schedule. I think it could get a little risky just considering they're probably only going to have 2 or 3 opportunities to get a Quad 1 or Quad 2 win with NC State, Arizona State, Memphis, Texas Tech. I guess that's 4. Probably have to get at least 2 of those just to kind of be in the conversation, but the overall record will look good. Coming out of non-conference play, I think they were below 500 at a point before SEC play last year, I think 7 or 8 games in. So it's obviously it has to be better than last year, and I think Vanderbilt knows that and has adjusted accordingly. So a lot to like here, but still a lot of questions. Jerry Stackhouse's team haven't played well early in their tenures and have got better as they've gone on, but I think this team has a little bit of grace period and also will have opportunities to go win some ball games early in the season. So just wanted to be quick. I wasn't as articulate as normal, but wanted to get across some of my points, and I think it's going to be a really interesting opening couple months of the season. Vanderbilt will obviously have to do a lot in SEC play just because it won't have a ton of resume builders, but it's going to have to be good in non-conference play and also complement that with SEC play. I don't think they're going to be quite as good as they were in SEC play last year, so this is going to be really important for them to hit the ground running early, something that his teams haven't done early, but maybe could against more of an adapted schedule. So thank you guys for watching. God bless, and I'll be back soon with some football and presumably some basketball coverage as well. Peace.